The fancy restaurant went dead silent when the manager told them to leave. Every fork stopped moving. Every conversation died. A little girl in a worn pink dress stood frozen by the table, water dripping from the white tablecloth where her glass had fallen. Her father, a man in a plain shirt with calloused hands, didn't move. He just looked at the manager and said 4 words that cut through the silence like a knife. "She's with me." And in the corner, wearing a red dress that cost more than most cars, billionaire heiress Teresa Aguilar went pale as a ghost. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far our stories reach and how they resonate across the globe. David Pettis had been saving money for 6 months to take his daughter Maya to Laurel Restaurant for her 8th birthday. He worked overtime at a construction site every weekend and skipped lunches to add extra dollars to the fund he kept in a coffee can under his bed. The restaurant cost a fortune, but Maya had seen a picture of it in a magazine at the doctor's office and talked about the crystal chandeliers for weeks. David decided she would get to see them in person. What Maya didn't know was that her father had enough money in offshore bank accounts to buy the restaurant 10 times over. David Pettis wasn't just a construction worker. He was David Pettis, the former CEO of Meridian Global Holdings, a man who had built a billion-dollar empire before he turned 35. He had walked away from it all 7 years ago after his divorce, choosing a quiet life in Queens over penthouses and private jets. He told no one about his past, not even his daughter. He wanted Maya to grow up normal, away from the world of money and power that had destroyed his marriage. But he kept one thing from his old life: a black titanium credit card with no limit and no name, just a number. The card connected to accounts in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore. Accounts that grew bigger every year from investments he had made a decade ago. David never touched the money. It sat there, waiting, growing, a safety net he hoped Maya would never need. On the morning of Maya's birthday, David woke her up early with pancakes and told her to wear her best dress. She put on the pink one with the white flowers that she wore to church. It was 2 years old and getting tight around the shoulders, but it was all she had. David wore his only pair of dress pants and a white button-up shirt he had ironed the night before. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a working man, not a CEO. Good. That was exactly what he wanted. They took the subway to Fifth Avenue. Maya pressed her face against the train window and watched the city pass by. She asked David if rich people were different from regular people. David told her that money didn't change who you were inside, only how other people treated you. Maya said she hoped the rich people at the restaurant would be nice. David said he hoped so too, but he wasn't counting on it. When they arrived at Laurel, David saw immediately that they didn't fit in. Men in $1,000 suits stood by the entrance smoking cigars. Women in designer dresses and jewelry that could pay for a house walked past them without a glance. The doorman looked at David and Maya like they were lost tourists who had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. David gave his name to the hostess, a thin woman with sharp eyes who checked a computer and frowned. She asked if he was sure about his reservation. David said yes. He had made it 3 months ago. The hostess said the reservation was there, but she needed to check something with the manager. She disappeared into the back and left them standing in the entrance while other guests walked past them. The hostess came back with a fake smile and led them to a table in the back corner near the kitchen doors. The worst table in the restaurant. David didn't complain. He pulled out Maya's chair and told her she looked like a princess. Maya smiled so wide it made David's chest hurt. The restaurant was the most beautiful place Maya had ever seen. She stared at the chandeliers and the white marble floors and the tables set with more forks and spoons than she knew existed. A waiter named Lucas brought them water and menus and told them to take their time. He was kind, younger than the others, and didn't look at them like they didn't belong. Maya was so excited looking at the menu that her hand shook. She picked up her water glass to take a drink, and that's when it happened. The glass slipped from her fingers, tipped over, and water spilled across the white tablecloth. The glass fell off the edge of the table and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the entire restaurant like a bomb going off. Every conversation stopped. Every person turned to look. Maya's face went red and tears filled her eyes. She said she was sorry over and over. David told her it was okay, it was just an accident, but he could see she was terrified. Lucas came over quickly with a towel and said it happened all the time. No problem. But before he could clean it up, another man appeared. He was older, 50 or so, in an expensive black suit with slick back hair. His name tag said manager. His name was Julian Vane. Julian looked at the broken glass, then at Maya, then at David. He said that perhaps this establishment wasn't suitable for their family. David asked what he meant. Julian said Laura catered to a specific clientele, people who knew how to conduct themselves properly. He suggested they might be more comfortable at a family-style restaurant. David felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. He told Julian that his daughter was 8 years old, and it was an accident. Julian said accidents like this disturbed the other guests and reflected poorly on the restaurant's standards. He said they would not be charged for their time, but he needed them to leave. Maya started crying. She said she was sorry and begged her father not to make them leave. Other diners were watching now, some whispering to each other, some looking uncomfortable. David stood up slowly. He put his hand on Maya's shoulder and looked at Julian Vane. He said 4 words that cut to the restaurant like a blade. "She's with me." The words were quiet, but everyone heard them. Julian blinked, confused by the tone. David continued. He said his daughter had been looking forward to this dinner for months. He had made a reservation 3 months in advance and confirmed it twice. He had saved money for 6 months to afford it. They had every right to be there, and they weren't leaving. Julian's face turned red. He said that David was making a scene, and if he didn't leave voluntarily, Julian would have security remove them. David didn't move. He said Julian could try, but it wouldn't end well for the restaurant. That's when a woman's voice cut through the tension. David Pettis. The voice came from across the restaurant. Every head turned toward a table by the window, where a woman in a red dress stood up. She was beautiful, in her early 30s, with dark hair and eyes that were wide with shock. Her name was Teresa Aguilar, and she was one of the richest women in New York City. Her family owned half the real estate in Manhattan and had a net worth that Forbes estimated at $12 billion. Teresa walked toward David's table. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. The entire restaurant watched her move. She stopped 3 feet from David and stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. "It is you," she said. Her voice shook. "I thought you were dead." David looked at Teresa Aguilar and felt his carefully built normal life start to crumble. He had hoped to never see anyone from his old world again, especially not here, not now, not in front of Maya. But there she was, and from the look on her face, she wasn't going to let him disappear quietly. Julian Vane stepped between them. He asked if there was a problem. Teresa ignored him completely. Her eyes stayed locked on David. "Do you know who I am?" Teresa asked David. David nodded slowly. "I know who you are." "Then you remember Barcelona." David's jaw tightened. He remembered Barcelona 6 years ago. A business conference at a hotel where Teresa had been giving a speech about international investment opportunities. David had been there representing Meridian Global. He'd been walking back to his room when he heard shouting from the parking garage. He found 3 men forcing Teresa toward a van. They had guns. Teresa was fighting them, screaming for help. David didn't think. He grabbed a tire iron from a maintenance cart and went at them. He broke one man's arm, knocked another unconscious, and scared the third one off. He pulled Teresa away from the van and told her to run. Security arrived 60 seconds later, but by then David was gone. He didn't want the attention or the questions or the media coverage that would come from saving a billionaire's daughter. He disappeared into the crowd and flew home the next day. Teresa had tried to find him. She hired investigators, offered rewards, gave interviews about the man who saved her life, and vanished. But David had covered his tracks well. He left Meridian Global 3 months later, changed his phone number, moved to a different borough, and became invisible. "You saved my life," Teresa said. Her voice was loud enough that everyone in the restaurant could hear. "These men tried to kidnap me in Barcelona. They had guns. They were going to take me and hold me for ransom. And this man right here, he stopped them. He fought 3 armed men and saved me, and then he disappeared before I could even thank him. The restaurant erupted in whispers. People pulled out their phones. Julian Vane looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Teresa turned to Julian. "This is the man you're trying to throw out? This is the man you say doesn't belong here." Julian stammered. He said he didn't know. He was just following restaurant policy. He was trying to maintain standards. Teresa's eyes went cold. She told Julian that David Pettis had more class in his little finger than Julian would ever have in his entire life. She said that if Julian tried to remove David from the restaurant, she would make one phone call and destroy Julian's career so thoroughly that he'd never work in hospitality again. Julian went pale. He apologized and said there had been a misunderstanding. He said of course David and his daughter were welcome to stay. He offered them a better table, complimentary champagne, anything they wanted. David told Julian to go away. Julian practically ran back to his office. Teresa looked down at Maya, who had stopped crying and was staring at Teresa with wide eyes. Teresa knelt down beside Maya's chair. So they were at eye level. "What's your name?" Teresa asked. "Maya," the little girl whispered. "That's a beautiful name. Is this your birthday?" Maya nodded. "Then you deserve the best birthday dinner ever. And no one, I mean no one, should make you feel bad for being here." Teresa stood up and pulled out her phone. She made a call. David heard her tell someone to send flowers, a birthday cake, and arrange for a pianist. She hung up and looked at David. "Can I join you?" she asked. "I've been trying to find you for 6 years. I'm not letting you disappear again." David wanted to say no. He wanted to take Maya and leave and go back to his quiet life. But Maya was looking at Teresa like she was a fairy godmother, and the truth was already out there. Half the people in the restaurant were filming them on their phones. By tomorrow morning, David's face would be all over social media. He pulled out a chair for Teresa. "Sit down." Teresa sat. She ordered Lucas to bring appetizers to the table, the best items on the menu. Lucas practically bowed and rushed off to the kitchen. For the next 20 minutes, Teresa talked to Maya about birthdays and school and favorite foods. She was good with kids, natural and warm. Maya opened up and talked about her friends and her teachers, and how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. David watched and realized that Teresa wasn't just being polite. She genuinely liked his daughter. Then Teresa turned to David. "Why did you disappear? After Barcelona, after everything, why did you just vanish?" David looked at his daughter, who was eating bread and butter, and watching them both with curious eyes. He chose his words carefully. "I wanted a different life," he said. "The one I had before wasn't working anymore. You left Meridian Global." "I did." "You were one of the youngest CEOs in the country. You built that company from nothing, and you just walked away." "Yes." "Why?" David didn't answer. The real reason was complicated. His ex-wife, Sarah, had been a corporate lawyer who cared more about status than family. Their marriage had been a merger more than a partnership. When Maya was born, Sarah went back to work after 6 weeks and hired a full-time nanny. She missed Maya's first steps because she was in Tokyo closing a deal. She missed Maya's first words because she was entertaining clients in Los Angeles. David had tried to keep the marriage together, but Sarah told him he had to choose, the company or the family. She didn't want a husband who worked 80 hours a week. David realized she was right, but his choice surprised her. He chose Maya. He left the company, divorced Sarah, and took full custody of his daughter. Sarah didn't fight it. She sent child support checks and Christmas cards and saw Maya twice a year. David built a new life in Queens. He got a job in construction because he liked working with his hands and being outside. He made enough to pay rent and put food on the table. He kept his old money hidden away, untouched, a secret insurance policy for Maya's future. "Some things matter more than success," David finally said. Teresa studied him for a long moment. "I've spent 6 years trying to repay you for what you did in Barcelona. I set up a scholarship fund in your name. I donated to charities you supported. I tried to find you so I could say thank you properly, but you'd erase yourself. I didn't want to be found. I can see that now." The appetizers arrived. Oysters, tuna tartare, truffle pasta. Maya tried everything and loved it all. She told Teresa that this was the best birthday she'd ever had. Teresa smiled and said the night was just getting started. David felt his phone buzz in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. He pulled it out and saw text messages from his lawyer, his accountant, and his former business partner. News about Barcelona had already hit the internet. Someone had posted a video of Teresa's speech in the restaurant. David's name was trending on social media. Reporters were calling his old office. His carefully constructed anonymity was being destroyed in real time. Maya tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, are you famous?" David looked at his daughter and saw innocence and confusion in her eyes. He'd tried so hard to give her a normal childhood, and now it was all falling apart. "I used to be," he said quietly, "a long time ago. Are you going to be famous again?" "I don't know, sweetheart." Teresa watched them carefully. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to expose you like this. When I saw you, when I realized it was really you, I couldn't stay silent." David shook his head. "It's not your fault. This was always going to happen eventually. I just hope for a few more years." Before Teresa could respond, another man approached their table. He was tall, 60 years old, with silver hair and a suit that probably cost $20,000. David recognized him immediately. His name was Richard Morrison, and he owned Laurel, along with 15 other restaurants across the world. Richard had his phone in his hand. His face was red. "Is it true?" he demanded. "Did my manager try to throw you out?" David said yes. Richard closed his eyes like he was in physical pain. "Mr. Pettis, I am so deeply sorry. What happened here tonight is inexcusable. Julian Vane will be terminated immediately. I will personally ensure." David held up his hand. "Stop." Richard stopped talking. David reached into his wallet and pulled out the black titanium card. He set it on the table. The card caught the candlelight and seemed to glow. "Do you know what this is?" David asked. Richard stared at the card. His face went white. He nodded slowly. "Then you know what I can do with it." Richard nodded again. David picked up the card and held it between two fingers. "This morning at 9 a.m., I used this card to purchase this building. The deed transferred at noon. I am now the owner of Laurel." The words hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. "Listen, if you're still here, it means you're invested. You want to see what happens next. But here's the reality. Most people watch stories like this and scroll away without subscribing. They enjoy it, then vanish. If this story actually matters to you, if you genuinely care about how it ends, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Otherwise, you'll probably forget this channel exists and miss all the other incredible stories I share." Complete silence fell over the restaurant. No one moved. No one breathed. Teresa Aguilar's mouth opened slightly in shock. Richard Morrison looked like he might faint. Even Maya stopped eating and stared at her father. David set the black card on the white tablecloth. "I heard about Laurel's reputation 3 months ago. I heard that management treated working families poorly, that they turned away people who didn't fit their image, that they cared more about exclusivity than hospitality. I wanted to see it for myself before I did anything." Richard found his voice. You bought the restaurant this morning?" "The building, the business, the name, everything. My lawyers handled the paperwork. The previous owners were happy to sell. They got above market value, and I got what I wanted." "Why?" Richard whispered. "Why would you do this?" David looked at Maya. "Because I wanted to bring my daughter here for her birthday. And I want to make sure that no other family would ever be treated the way we were treated tonight." Richard Morrison had turned from red to completely pale. "Mr. Pettis, I had no idea. If I had known who you were." "That's the problem," David interrupted. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect. My daughter spilled a glass of water. Your manager tried to throw us out because we didn't look rich enough. That's not hospitality. That's discrimination." Teresa leaned forward. "You bought this entire restaurant just to teach them a lesson?" David shook his head. "I bought it to change it. Laurel has a potential to be something special. The food is excellent. The location is perfect. But the culture is rotten." He turned to Richard Morrison. "You're fired." Richard actually stumbled backward. "Mr. Pettis, please. I've been in this industry for 30 years. This restaurant is my legacy." "Your legacy is making people feel small. That ends tonight." David stood up and raised his voice so everyone in the restaurant could hear him. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Pettis. As of this morning, I am the owner of Loror. Effective immediately, this restaurant is under new management." People pulled out their phones. Some were recording. Some were already posting to social media. David didn't care anymore. "The old policies are gone," David continued. "We will no longer judge guests by their appearance or their bank account. We will not seat people in corners to hide them. We will treat every person who walks through that door with the same respect, whether they're a billionaire or a construction worker saving up for their daughter's birthday." Applause started at one table, then spread through the restaurant. Not everyone was clapping. Some of the wealthy diners looked angry or confused, but enough people were applauding that it created a wave of sound. David sat back down. He looked at Lucas, the young waiter who had been kind to them from the beginning. "What's your full name?" "Lucas Chun, sir." "How long have you worked here, Lucas?" 3 years. "Do you like it?" Lucas hesitated. He glanced at Richard Morrison, then back at David. "The job pays well, but the culture is difficult. Would you like to be the new manager?" Lucas's eyes went wide. "Sir, I'm only 26. I've never managed." "You showed kindness to a little girl who was scared. You cleaned up broken glass without making her feel worse about it. You treated us like human beings when your bosses were treating us like problems. That's the kind of manager I want running this place." I don't know what to say." "Say yes." "Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you." David turned to Richard Morrison. "You have until tomorrow morning to clear out your office. Lucas will be given access to all files and accounts. You'll receive a severance package as outlined in your contract, but your time here is done." Richard opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He knew he had no leverage. He nodded stiffly and walked away. Julian Vane, the manager who had started this whole mess, had been watching from the doorway to the kitchen. He tried to slip away, but David called out to him. "Julian, come here." Julian walked over slowly, like a man walking to his execution. "You're fired too," David said simply. "But unlike Richard, you don't get severance. You get nothing. You tried to humiliate an 8-year-old girl on her birthday. That's unforgivable." Julian's face went through several emotions: shock, anger, fear, and finally resignation. He took off his name tag, set it on the nearest table, and left the restaurant without a word. Maya tugged on David's sleeve again. "Daddy, you really own this restaurant?" "I really do, sweetheart." "Does that mean we can come back?" David smiled. "We can come back whenever you want." Teresa Aguilar was staring at David like she was seeing him for the first time. "You're full of surprises, David Pettis." "I try to keep a low profile." "I don't think that's possible anymore." She was right. David's phone was buzzing constantly now. News outlets were calling. His old business contacts were reaching out. The video of him announcing he owned the restaurant had already been shared 10,000 times. A server brought out a birthday cake with 8 candles. The entire restaurant sang happy birthday to Maya. She blew out the candles and made a wish. When David asked what she wished for, she said she couldn't tell or it wouldn't come true. They ate dinner slowly, savoring every bite. Teresa told stories about her travels around the world. Maya asked about Paris and Tokyo, and whether Teresa had ever seen a real elephant. They laughed and talked like old friends. And for a little while, David forgot about the cameras and the attention, and the fact that his secret life had just been exposed to the entire world. After dessert, Teresa stood up. "I should go. I've intruded on your birthday dinner long enough." Maya jumped up and hugged her. "Thank you for making my birthday special." Teresa hugged her back. "Thank you for sharing it with me." She looked at David. "Can I see you again?" "Not here. Somewhere private. We have a lot to talk about." David hesitated, then nodded. "I'll call you." "Promise?" "Promise." Teresa left the restaurant. David watched her go and wondered what he'd just agreed to. Lucas approached the table nervously. "Mr. Pettis, what would you like me to do first?" David thought about it. "Tomorrow morning, I want you to review every employee file. Anyone who has a complaint about being mistreated or discriminated against, I want to hear about it. Anyone who has treated guests poorly, I want them retrained or replaced. This restaurant is going to change, Lucas, and you're going to help me change it." "Yes, sir. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." David paid the bill with his black card, left a tip that was larger than most people's monthly salary, and took Maya home. The next morning, David woke up to find his face on the front page of the New York Times business section. The headline read, "Billionaire CEO emerges from hiding, buys Manhattan restaurant to prove a point." The story had everything. His history with Meridian Global, the Barcelona rescue, his 7 years of anonymity, and the dramatic takeover of Loror. His phone had 214 missed calls. Maya came into his room still in her pajamas. "Dad, there are people outside." David looked out the window. News vans lined the street. Reporters with cameras stood on the sidewalk. His quiet life in Queens was officially over. "Pack a bag," he told Maya. "We're going to hotel for a few days." "Why?" "Because we need some privacy while we figure things out." They packed quickly and left through the back entrance. David called his old lawyer, a man named Kenneth Winters, who had handled his divorce and his departure from Meridian Global. Kenneth said he'd been trying to reach David all night. He said the media wanted interviews, old business partners wanted meetings, and at least a dozen companies wanted to hire him as a consultant. David said he wasn't interested in any of it. Kenneth said that was fine, but David needed to make a statement or the speculation would get out of control. David agreed to a press conference the following week. They checked into a hotel under a fake name. David ordered room service and let Maya watch cartoons while he made phone calls. He called Lucas Chun and asked how things were going at the restaurant. Lucas said they'd had 3 times the normal reservations for lunch. Everyone wanted to see the place where the dramatic scene had happened. David told Lucas to honor every reservation and treat every guest the same way, whether they were famous or not. He called his accountant and asked about his finances. The accountant said David's net worth had actually increased since he left Meridian Global. The investments he'd made 10 years ago had grown significantly. David had enough money to never work again and still leave Maya a fortune. That afternoon, Teresa Aguilar called. She asked if she could come see him. David gave her the hotel address. She arrived an hour later wearing jeans and a simple sweater, the first time David had seen her in casual clothes. She hugged Maya, then sat down on the couch across from David. "You caused quite a stir," she said. "I noticed. The internet is obsessed with you. People are calling you the hidden billionaire and the restaurant vigilante." David rubbed his face. "I just want to give Maya a nice birthday." "You did more than that. You exposed a problem that exists in dozens of high-end establishments. People are sharing stories about being discriminated against at restaurants because of how they looked or where they came from. You started a conversation. I didn't mean to start anything, but you did, and now you have a choice. You can hide again, or you can use this moment to make a real difference." David looked at Maya, who was drawing pictures at the desk. "I don't want to go back to that world. Teresa, I left it for a reason." "I know, but maybe you don't have to go all the way back. Maybe you can do something smaller, more focused. You already bought one restaurant. What if you bought more?" "Why would I do that?" "Because you could change them. You could create a chain of restaurants that treat everyone with respect. You could prove that hospitality doesn't have to be exclusive to be excellent." David thought about it. The idea had merit. He had the money and the business experience, and he'd already taken the first step by buying Loror. "Let me think about it," he said. Teresa smiled. "That's all I ask." She stayed for dinner. They ordered pizza and watched a movie with Maya. It felt normal and comfortable, like they were old friends instead of people who barely knew each other. After Maya fell asleep, David and Teresa sat on the balcony, looking at the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Teresa said, "Sure. Why did you really save me in Barcelona? You didn't know me. You could have just called security and walked away. David was quiet for a moment because it was the right thing to do, because someone needed help and I was there. Most people wouldn't have risked it. I'm not most people. Teresa laughed softly. No, you're definitely not. 2 weeks later, Laurel reopened under new management. Lucas Chun implemented new policies. No dress code beyond basic decency, no table discrimination, and mandatory kindness training for all staff. The restaurant kept its high culinary standards, but changed its culture completely. The opening night was packed. Reporters came to cover the story. Food critics came to see if the quality had changed. And regular people came because they'd heard about the restaurant that treated everyone the same. David attended with Maya and Teresa. They sat at the same table where Maya had spilled her water. Lucas had left the table exactly as it was, in the corner by the kitchen, as a reminder of where the change began. A family sat at the table next to them. The father wore a factory uniform and looked nervous. The mother held a baby. 2 kids, maybe 6 and 9, stared at the chandeliers with the same wonder Maya had shown on her birthday. Lucas greeted them warmly and took their order personally. When the father asked about prices, Lucas told him that every table got the same menu at the same price, and payment plans were available for special occasions. David watched the family relax and smile. He watched the kids taste food they'd never tried before. He watched the parents hold hands across the table. Maya leaned against his shoulder. Did we do a good thing, Daddy? David kissed the top of her head. Yeah, sweetheart, we did a good thing. Teresa raised her wine glass. To new beginnings. David raised his water. To treating people right. They touched glasses and drank. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy. Inside Laurel, families of all backgrounds sat together, sharing meals and making memories. David Pettis had tried to hide from his past, but his past had found him anyway. And maybe he thought that wasn't such a bad thing after all, because some secrets weren't meant to be kept forever. And some moments, like a little girl's birthday dinner, were worth fighting for. He looked at Maya, who was explaining to Teresa's date how chandeliers worked. He looked at the family next to them, happy and comfortable in a place that would have rejected them 2 weeks ago. He looked at Lucas, who was training servers to see people instead of bank accounts. And David smiled, because this right here was what mattered, not money, not power, not status or success or fame. Just people being kind to other people. Just a father giving his daughter the birthday she deserved. Just doing the right thing, even when it cost everything. Maya tugged his sleeve. Can we come back next month? David laughed. We can come back whenever you want, sweetheart. I own the place, remember? Oh, yeah. Maya grinned. That's pretty cool. Yeah, David agreed. It really is. This story teaches us that true dignity and respect aren't determined by wealth, appearance, or social status, but by how we treat others, especially when we have power. David could have revealed his wealth immediately to avoid humiliation, but he chose to defend his daughter's right to be there as ordinary people first, proving that everyone deserves respect regardless of their background. The story shows that real leadership means using privilege and resources to lift others up and change unjust systems, not to elevate yourself above them. It reminds us that kindness costs nothing but means everything, that judging people by their clothes or economic status reveals our own character flaws, and that one person standing up against discrimination can spark meaningful change. Most importantly, it demonstrates that the best inheritance we can give our children isn't money, but the example of defending what's right, treating all people with dignity, and understanding that our value as human beings has nothing to do with what we own and everything to do with who we are. So here's the real question. Did you subscribe yet? Thousands of people will listen to this story and won't subscribe. Please don't be that person. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My dad said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show him that these tales matter. Please subscribe to this channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. And here's what I need to know. Do you want part 2?